As events unfold in the world today, I don't see anything good coming from it.
Polad Bulbuloglu, singer, composer and statesman, left a lasting mark on Azerbaijani culture. He served as a Minister of Culture and later as ambassador to Russia. He is now a member of parliament. His surname, Bulbuloglu, meaning son of the nightingale, honors the legacy of his father, Bulbul, a figure who profoundly shaped Azerbaijan's cultural heritage. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Gladly, in fact.
You mentioned that your father passed away when you were 15. Shortly before his death, he held a concert in Shusha. Do you remember your father's concerts? What did you feel during them?
You know, actually it was unexpected. Well, this was year 1961. Well, to be precise, I was already 16 years old, which I turned in February. It was somewhere in the summer. I was already driving a car. We had a Volga then. And he says to me, well, son, can the car get to Shusha? The car can even get to Moscow. So what? I just want to go to Shusha. So, of course, I told Mom that Dad was planning to go to Shusha. And by the way, it's thanks to Mom that these shots remain, where he walks up to his house, because Mom called the television then and said that Bulbul is going to Shusha. If possible, send operators, let them film. After all, he is going to his homeland. And it seemed like he could feel something. So we arrived in Shusha, and even the local government gathered there, the first secretary of the city committee and so on. Dad said that he wants to give a concert for the people for free, just to gather people and give a concert. In Shusha there was a secondary school with a hall for about 400, maybe 500 seats, but it was the largest hall at that time. There were very large windows. So my father asked for them to be opened, as many people were expected to attend. This way, those who couldn't get into the hall but were standing near the building would still be able to hear. Well, I want to say right away that so many people gathered on the first day that a day later my father gave a second concert. That is, he gave two concerts, about 3 hours each. He sang with pleasure, and so to say, people even asked him to sing some songs. He sang gladly, talked with the people, joked somehow, you know, well, I was already studying at the music school and I already started accompanying my father and so on. But I emphasized that just as a musician, I felt that he was simply on fire, as they say, and he didn't want to leave the stage. And these two concerts in Shusha were the last concerts, the last performances of his life. I don't remember the dates exactly right now, but it was the end of August. And on September 26th, he passed away. Believe it or not, there is some kind of attraction or some kind of feeling because a person went to his homeland, to the land where he was born. He entered the house where he was born and kind of said goodbye to the people, to the stunning nature of Shusha, Karabakh. He interacted with people, and literally in less than a month, he passed away.
How do you think your father might have reacted if he had witnessed the occupation of his hometown?
Honestly, I sometimes thought that it's good that our great ones did not live to see the day when Shusha came under occupation. Almost 30 years we were waiting for this liberation. These are very terrible pages of our history, both humanly and legally, call it what you will. Although diplomatic negotiations were ongoing the whole time, Azerbaijan never refused to participate. But at some point, I think it was around 2010 or 2011, at least from my observations, people in Azerbaijan realized that nothing would come of negotiation and peaceful persuasion. But all our persuasions, all our, so to speak, arguments just seemed to go in one ear and out the other. They were telling us about big forces are behind us, we're here and we're not going anywhere, we won't leave. So to speak, they brazenly told us that nothing would work out for us. Well, and when Pashinyan said that Karabakh is Armenia, period, our president at Valdai said that Karabakh is Azerbaijan, exclamation mark. It is clear that an exclamation mark and a period are not comparable, so to speak, even in the way they are written. But we had the intention to get our lands back, which we did.
Once peace is achieved, in your opinion, what helps strengthen it more effectively? Cultural or political diplomacy?
These processes are inseparable. Plus, there's the military aspect. The stronger one dictates the terms. For a while, it seemed like there was justice. Now there's no justice, no law. Now there's the law of the strong. The one who is stronger is right, just like in the forest. Unfortunately, humanity is not moving towards justice. Although for some time after the Second World War, which ended in 1945 and led to the creation of the United Nations, people on Earth seem to realize that fighting is bad, shedding blood is bad, and that justice eventually punishes evil anyway, so it's better not to do it. And there you have it. 60 or 70 years later, there were wars in Africa and elsewhere. The Vietnam War, the Afghan War, by the way, but these were more or less local. There wasn't a global one like before. And you see how appetite comes with eating. Now just look at what's happening.
In your opinion, is the United Nations effective right now?
Not at all. There were 4 Security Council resolutions, not Assembly, but Security Council mandatory resolutions, where it is clearly stated that Armenia must immediately withdraw its troops from the territory of Azerbaijan. And then what? For 30 years, these resolutions remained just on paper until we implemented them ourselves. We appealed many times. Appealed, spoke, wrote, and spoke at general assemblies, and there someone spoke for us in the Security Council. But nevertheless, you see, unfortunately, this is an organization that only declares something.
In 2024, you noted that we live in an era of a new paradigm of international relations, but desire for intercultural dialogue remains. What exactly has changed in this new paradigm?
You know, the desire for cultural dialogue remains among people, cultural figures, and those involved in culture, let's say creative people. This is quite a large segment of the population. However, unfortunately, our voices are firstly fewer compared to the general political directions. And secondly, everything is decided by politicians and statesmen, the leaders of states, for many of whom culture is in 15th place.
What exactly has changed in this new paradigm?
Well, what has changed is what I see today. And in the global panorama, it's getting worse and worse. Phrase that culture, no. Beauty will save the world. It's just a beautiful phrase, but it doesn't save.
Are there any advantages to this new paradigm?
No? Well, what are the advantages if everything is being destroyed? Any war is destruction. I'm not talking about the fact that the death of any soldier, the death of any person is bad. Well, it's there in all religions that every person carries their world with them. And look at the number of killed and wounded in recent years. I won't name countries. You know better than I do who is at war with whom today. Look at what's happening in the world. Instead of becoming more cultured, more open to education, culture, and development, the world is not progressing. Even though on one hand robots are being made, and the first thing is what? A robot warrior. Robots that destroy, that put landmines, I don't know, just like those drones. What's that? Well, it's also a robot. See how quickly we've learned to destroy each other. They could have been used there for agriculture or for something useful. But you see, unfortunately, it's the human thirst for war. The older you get, the more you think about it. It started with the fact that in the Stone Age, people threw stones at each other and then invented stone-throwing machines. And then when gunpowder appeared, when humans invented gunpowder, all of this followed. And then when they discovered the atom and armed themselves with it, what is it? God forbid, it would mean the destruction of the planet, the destruction of all living things on Earth.
So it's in human nature.
Unfortunately, it's about aggression and the desire to dominate others.
In 1930s, the Spanish philosopher José Ortega y Gasset, in his work The Revolt of the Masses, warned that the masses, the so-called broad public, could seize public power, begin dictating their own rules, deciding whom to forget, whom to destroy, and whom to elevate to a pedestal. He wrote, The masses do not wish to coexist with anyone but themselves. How applicable is this to today's world?
All this so-called democratic election system, which we see today in the example of Europe, does not always bring forward true leaders. That is, some opportunistic agreements between parties, between certain clans, between, well, let's not hide it, very wealthy groups of people, so to speak, who through bribery, through infusions of money, resolve their own issues, big corporations and so on. But nevertheless, we see that all of this is becoming uncontrollable.
Going back to your father, how did he end up in Italy?
Oh, as a boy, he became very popular initially in Ganja, in Azerbaijan and Karabakh, naturally. Then his fame reached Georgia, and there are also many Azerbaijanis in Georgia. He was then invited to Azerbaijani weddings in Georgia. He was still just a kid. Well, he was 16, 17 years old. And for the first time, he went to the opera theater in Tbilisi and was completely captivated by the performance happening on stage. Back then, there was a very famous singer in Georgia, I think, Ivanos Radishvili. I might be wrong about the surname, but you would need to check the book about my father or ask at our museum and show them how Bulbul sings. But he sang naturally muams and folk songs, these fiorituras. He was completely amazed by the skill and ability to hit high notes and so on, and he said, you need to learn. And my father told him that he had been to the opera theater and it was so great. He asked, do you want to do that? Well, I would like to. And for that, you need to learn. You need to go to Italy, son, kind of like that, you know. And this idea of going to Italy somehow captivated him. And the first time, he went on his own money. By the way, we have a photo in Shusha. I don't know if it's in the Baku Museum or not. He has a belt made of pure gold. And once I found that photo of my father and asked him, Dad, is this a golden belt? He said, yes. And he said, the first time I went to Italy, I sold that golden belt and went to Italy. By the way, that's when I found out that twice before going to study, he went to Italy and presented himself to several specialists, vocalists, professors, those who were teaching there. And for example, one of them said to him, and do you want to turn from a brilliant Oriental singer into an ordinary European tenor? Why do you need that? Well, you know, he already had a goal, the idea to sing in opera.
How old was he when he went to Italy?
Well then, if he went to study in 1927, that means it was probably around 1925, maybe 25, 26, something like that. He had already graduated from the Baku Conservatory. So he approached the Azerbaijani government. The Azerbaijani government reached out to the Soviet Union government. And just imagine that in 1927, the Soviet government even allocated some kind of scholarship and sent him to study in Italy. He went to study with very good professors at La Scala. And his father himself said that the best conservatory is the Gallery of La Scala. While in La Scala in Italy, he listened to Chaliapin 14 times. Back then, there was a kind of student community where everyone was learning. And once again, to get into the Gallery of La Scala was a hot topic of debate, discussions, and so on. This was best school of its kind, you know. And there is a very interesting message. When he finished his studies, there was an Italian magazine called Arte Nostra, and it had a big article about him. And after that article came out, several impresarios approached with an offer to start a European career. And they even suggested promoting as the first Muslim to receive a European school of singing, with such advertising, so to speak, that a young man from Azerbaijan has now mastered the Italian school of singing.
As some sort of PR.
Yes, PR. And they promised, so to speak, huge fees for those times, tours, trips, and so on. But father was determined to return to Baku, and he did return. More when he came back and gave his first concert, he faced significant criticism because he sang there in Italian and sometimes in Russian. In Russian, Bulbul rhymes with sparrow. Solovey Voробey, it was written that the nightingale left, the sparrow arrived. Even in the newspapers, it was like this. What is this? What is he singing at all? It is completely unclear. The person sang folk songs, and now what is he singing at all?
Was it a kind of rejection?
Such a rejection, yes, of the European singing style or something like that. But when I grew up, once when we were driving in the car, I asked him, Muru, Dad, why did you come back? You yourself said they offered you a chance to tour, to build a career, everything. The first time he joked, saying he got tired of eating spaghetti and didn't continue the topic. But later somehow I brought it up again and said, Dad, I'm still curious. You had such opportunities ahead of you. He said again, well, if I hadn't come, you wouldn't have been born. I said, well, maybe I would have been born in some other capacity. You may have married some Italian woman or something like that. Well, it's a joke. And then when I got a bit older, he said, you know, you kept asking, and I want to explain to you that, yes, I could have had a European career. I would have traveled there to different countries, singing and so on. But I would never have become who I became in Azerbaijan. And then Uzer Gajibekov wrote his opera Koroglu specifically for his voice. And this opera was performed in the year 1936. There was a premiere. In the year 1938, it was shown at the first decade of Azerbaijani culture and art in Moscow. Joseph Vissarionovich Stalin was present at the performance, and afterward, going backstage, warmly thanked the artists, and in particular my father. He said, would you agree to give another performance if I come? I would very much like to hear this opera once more. And after the official closing, they repeated the opera.
Speaking about art and power, since 1960s, the English-speaking world has used art and culture as a form of soft power to promote its own interests. Does Azerbaijan have the potential to move in a similar direction?
Yes, but we don't use it as a force, but as an opportunity for contacts and a way to represent Azerbaijan. Well, we have never aimed for it. As I have been in politics for many years, I've been a minister and an ambassador. We have never laid claim to someone else's territory. Our only goal was to liberate our own. We know what a great sorrow it is when someone encroaches on your territory. Therefore, as far as I understand, we have no such thoughts, neither with soft power nor with hard power.
But as a promotion?
Yes, but promotion is very important for the state to support, and that's why cultural days are held and various trips are sponsored. In this respect, the Heydar Aliyev Foundation does a lot. It provides a lot of opportunities. And there are very creative people working there who are trying to promote Azerbaijani culture. They promote it worldwide in every possible way. And for this, a big thank you to them for helping in this very necessary large activity, so to speak.
Speaking of culture and heritage, in May, the Palme d'Or was awarded to Iranian director of Azerbaijani origin.
Yes, in Cannes. I haven't seen it.
Before this recognition, the average viewer in Azerbaijan showed little interest in him. Why do people start taking an interest in their, if we could say, talented ethnic relatives only after they gain international recognition?
There are more than 30 million Azerbaijanis in Iran. That means half of Iran is Azerbaijani. That's why it's very difficult to track things deliberately, so to speak. Also, to be honest, people in Iran are very sensitive to any attempts even to hold some kind of cultural events and so on. For 18 years, as the Minister of Culture, I tried very hard to establish cultural contacts with Iran. And they are very limited. Why? Because, well, ballet is not allowed, this is not allowed, that is not allowed. We gave some concerts there. There was a system. They have an organization like the Soviet Glavlit.
For an approval.
They might not like something, so the song lyrics must be submitted 3 months in advance. But once again, I'm saying within the framework of that ideology that is in Iran, it is quite difficult to interact with them on cultural grounds.
Going back to your father, if you could say one thing to him, what would it be?
I have not had enough of you. Dad left very early. It's hard for me to even say. I would say a lot, but somehow it's not easy to articulate immediately because he was very dear to me, close, and in some sense both a teacher and, well, everything. So that's why his death was a huge blow for me. I couldn't recover for several years.